What's up, everybody, and welcome back. Today we are going to talk about several tips that you must do if you are going to get into sports card collecting in 2024. I don't think it's the greatest idea to do that right now because you could save yourself a little bit of money if you just wait a little bit longer as prices are still in decline. But if you must get into sports cards, these are things that you absolutely must do if you want to be successful in the sports card market. All right, the very first thing that you need to do is understand why you are getting into sports cards and pick what type of a collector that you are going to be. This is going to fall into a few subcategories that we are going to talk about, but this is the most important thing that you can do to set yourself on a realistic path to be successful no matter what your goals end up being. All right, when it comes to deciding why you are in the sports card hobby, you basically need to go down one of two avenues. Number one, am I going to be collecting cards because I like and idolize players? So for myself, I'll just give you an example. I grew up in Michigan, so I collect players like Steve Yzerman, Gordie Howe, Tom Brady, players that went to the University of Michigan, played for the Detroit Red Wings, the Detroit Lions, the Detroit Tigers, and the Detroit Pistons. Those are the things that I really enjoy. Option number two is going down the value avenue, which is you're going to be collecting not necessarily to flip and make money right off the bat, but you want to buy things that you think are going to hold and potentially gain value over time. Doesn't always work out that way, though, so I am not encouraging you to quit your job or put your life savings into this by any means, but you definitely need to pick one of those two avenues before you get started in sports cards. The reason why those things are so important to decide is because, number one, if I'm just collecting something because I liked it and I idolize those players and I watched them growing up and it's something that's really cool to me, is that it's not something that I'm going to spend a lot of money on, and whatever I do buy, I'm okay with just putting them into a box or a display case like the one behind me, and just letting them basically sit there, and they're just cool to me. I like them, and they have some kind of sentimental value because I grew up watching the athletes and those sports, and I really enjoy those things. And so there's not really any kind of crazy value in that, but it just brings me joy seeing those cards and knowing that I own them. Now, if you decide to go down the value route, it's important that you decide that you're going to pursue certain players because only certain players really hold a lot of value. Unless a player is a Hall of Fame caliber or an all-time great, typically players outside of that specific category are going to continue to decline for all time. Now, like I mentioned with those Hall of Fame players or all-time greats, there is a way to participate in the sports card market and still be able to gain some kind of a value from your cards, but you have to be very, very selective. If you're doing it because it's fun and you like the players, you can kind of pick and choose and buy whatever you like because you're not spending a lot of money anyways, and you don't care about a return on investment or a rise in value at all. Now, when you're doing it from a value perspective, though, you do have to be a lot more selective, so you really need a game plan that you put in place before you get started. If you want your cards to gain value or have the potential to gain value over the long term, you need to take into consideration how rare something is and how hard it is to find. If you find a card, let's say that you spend a lot of time going to, local card shows, card shops, etc., you will kind of get an idea for the types of things that you see regularly and the things that only pop up, every so often and that are a lot harder to come by. Those products or those cards that are hard to come by that you don't see, especially of a player like a Tom Brady or a Patrick Mahomes, even now that he's got a couple of Super Bowls, any Hall of Fame type players or guys that are going to go there, the Steph Currys, the LeBron James, those kind of guys, if you're buying those kinds of things, you need to find the cards of those players that are also very rare, like an auto rookie card or a card that's numbered to like 10 or less. If it's any kind of modern card at all, it's got to be numbered very, very low because there are so many different varieties and parallels now that you need to understand exactly what you're buying and go after things that you don't see. Now, the second thing that you absolutely must do before you decide to get into sports cards and before you start throwing a lot of money away and chasing a bunch of things is you need to not buy into hype. You don't need to get sucked into that. You don't need to get into breaks. You don't need to be ripping a bunch of wax, going to local card shops and buying a bunch of boxes and ripping packs, trying to hit some kind of crazy card. It is much, much, much more cost effective to just buy the cards that you want. especially if you see a card that comes out and it is a part of a newer product. Do not buy it right away. I don't care if it's numbered to 5 to 10 to 25. You will always see more of those cards surface, especially on like an eBay, or if you're in Facebook card groups or anything like that. You are always going to see more of those because they're not as rare as everyone seems to think that they are. Wait it out. Let the hype wear off from all of these new products and then go after them. Now, when we talk about the hype and not buying into the hype, I'm talking specifically about prospects. This is a much bigger thing in baseball than it is in any of the other sports, but you do see it obviously with like football. I guess you could see it a little bit in basketball, not really as much in hockey. But anytime that you've got a draft coming up, like the NBA draft, the NFL draft, the NHL draft, etc., you're always going to have hype around certain players. Baseball, obviously, you've got the draft, and then you've got players that are in, AA, AAA, and coming up to the majors. So what you need to do is understand that if you're watching a player and you see a lot of young, raw talent on the field and you're impressed by that and you want to go out and you want to buy their cards, obviously if you're doing this from just a collecting standpoint, you don't want to buy these guys when they have all that hype around them because their prices are so inflated and it's not going to be good for you. But especially if you're doing it for value, you don't want to buy them at that time, right? You want to let them get into the league. Maybe they've got like kind of a down year to start with. Their values are going to come down. They're not going to get much love from the hobby. Then you could buy those things and potentially, grade the cards. You could buy them raw, send them in for grading, and then try to increase the value that way. And then if they've got a good second, third, fourth year, then they could explode. A good example of this would have been, Mike Trout. Mike Trout came into the league. He was relatively unknown. And then later, it took a couple of years, but later into his career, he became the superstar that we all know him as today. But some of these guys that are coming up, every time that Bowman Chrome or Bowman Draft drops as a product, there's always one or two guys on the cover of the box that are, 18, 19 years old that have all these people saying how great they're going to be. And it takes those guys 5 or 6 years in some cases just to make a starting roster in the MLB. So if you're buying into that hype and you're buying a product and you're getting those cards, or if you're waiting for them to come out, let's say it's numbered out of 50 or out of 25, those are some of the more popular ones out of Bowman Chrome, like a gold or an orange. You buy those cards and you're paying like $100, $200, $500 for some of these prospects for a non-auto, and then it's still going to take several years for them to get to the league. People kind of forget about them as they're progressing anyways before they even get to the MLB. So do not buy into the hype. Things are going to be way, way, way overvalued. You do not need to go chasing if you really want to be successful in the sports card hobby. The third thing that you definitely need to do, and I don't know, maybe I could argue that this is the number one most important thing to do not take all of your advice from the internet and things that you see out there either, whether it is Facebook or YouTube or Instagram or big influencers that have a major following. Do not be the person to just see a clip and immediately assume that that's the truth and go after it and start pursuing cards. Do your research. Do some homework on your own. Find out what products and services and things are most important to collectors, and the best way to do all of that is to do it in person. I definitely recommend, if you're getting into sports cards in 2024, you need to attend at least 1 to 2 local shows. Go there, talk to some of the younger dealers, talk to some of the older dealers, and then figure out what you should be focusing on after talking to both, because they are going to have wildly, wildly different concepts when it comes to who you should be collecting and what you should be collecting and whether you should be buying raw cards, graded cards, chasing cards, prospecting, etc. There is so much information out there that you need to just simplify it, and you need to go talk to people in person. Don't just watch a couple clips on the internet and say, yeah, I can flip some cards, I can make a little bit of money doing this, and then start doing it without any knowledge. Go to eBay, look at what cards have actually sold for. If you don't know how to do this, let me know in the comments below and I will tell you how to do it. Go to eBay, set it to sold listings only, look up specific cards or specific players that you're looking to buy and see what the history is for those cards and what they've been selling for before you just jump right in. But you definitely need to do a lot of this stuff in person. It's a lot easier to kind of get a feel for other collectors and what they're buying and selling so that you know what to look for if you are doing it from a value perspective, but also to be able to see some really cool things in person. And honestly, you can get much better deals in person too. If you know how to talk to people and you understand what other people are looking for, you might be able to trade for a certain card. You don't necessarily have to just deal in cash all the time. You can just buy and sell, but if you wanted to trade for something, you could. You can obviously haggle with people at shows, and definitely do that. Don't be someone that walks up to a table and sees a price and thinks that that's a fixed price. You can definitely negotiate for everything there, and a lot of people, especially the good dealers, will definitely work with you, and more so than ever in this market. Now, I don't want to discourage anyone from getting into sports cards, period. You just need to do a lot of research before you do. But I do want to share one example with you. I will just let you know that there was a Tom Brady downtown. So if you don't know what those are, you should go look them up. They're one of the cooler inserts that are out there. I'm sure a lot of you already know. But back in August of 2022, I paid $900 raw for a Tom Brady downtown from 2020 Optic. I was able to send that into PSA and got it graded for $50, so I'm in it for $950. It graded a PSA 10. I held it all the way through 2023, and now we're into 2024. I know everyone says the market is soft and the prices have dipped, myself included. I've seen it, but I did sell that card recently for $1,650. So there is money to be made if you're buying the right things. That is a card that I got for the right price. I graded it. Luckily, it was a 10, which is always awesome. It's a great feeling. Doesn't always happen, though, but luckily it was a 10. It came back to me. I held it for an entire year while everything was kind of falling apart and, values were declining, etc. And I was able to sell that, and I still made money, like several $100s on just one card. So if you do want to do it for money, you can. I will probably be using that money to go after other Tom Brady rookie cards. That's really what I'm doing, is slimming down my focus this year to Tom Brady rookies only in a high grade, especially the numbered ones. I want to look for more things like that downtown that are rare that I think I could potentially flip later on, and I'm not just flipping it to make the money, but that will then help me take more funds to put back into my personal collection, which helps your collection grow over time. So don't think that you've got to be in a hurry with this either. You can certainly take your time. It's an evolving process, but just do your homework first, and you will be successful in sports cards in 2024. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I really appreciate you checking out this channel. Drop a like and a comment below to let me know what you thought. If you haven't done this already, please subscribe to the channel. We've been growing a little bit lately, and hopefully you guys are enjoying this stuff. I'm going to make a few more videos this year, and I will catch you next time.